Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store. Good afternoon, Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League fans, and welcome into another edition of the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast for Episode 11, Season 2, here on the network, your home for Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League hockey here in Manitoba, on your home for hockey in the province on G Show Productions. Glad to be with you. I'm Graham the G Show Forsyth, and we're brought to you by McKenna Fasteners and Tools, Terrico Goaltenders, and as you saw with the opening commercial in this one, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, as we take a look at last week's scores and taking a look at last night. There were two games that were played in the mmjhl as the St. Boniface Riels ended up taking their victory over the Stonewall Jets last night 5-2. As for the St. Vital Junior Victorias, we'll show you some highlights of their game from last night in just a moment from St. Vital, and they ended up moving on up in the standings with a win against the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, now at 13-6-3. The Raiders now on a 7-game losing streak with 7-11-3 record this year, remaining in 8th place as of right now. For St. Boniface, with that victory over Stonewall, they jump up to 4th place in the standings, a point back of tying second, 2 points away from jumping over top of the Hawks and Victorias in the standings, though. But as we take a look at the schedule, St. Boniface may very well be a few more points behind after Charles Wood's game tonight, as Charles Wood looking to stay in the win column for their second win in a row tonight against the River East Royal Knights, on a game that can be seen here on G Show Productions on gshow.ca tonight for our edition of mmjhl Game Day. But as for last night's action, we're going to get into it right now, as it was the Victorias at home taking on the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. The Vics were looking to make it 2 wins in a row for themselves, coming off of a 4-2 victory against the River East Royal Knights last Sunday at Terry Sawchuk Arena. And of course, like mentioned, they were back on home ice, taking on a Raiders team that has had their fair share of struggles as of late. Like I mentioned, they ended up losing this game, but they were losers of 6 in a row coming in, and it was quite a start from the St. Vital Junior Victorias, as it would be Aiden Anderson sending this down low and getting back as he makes his way into the low slot for his 6th of the year, putting away a Lucas Gillison pass, as later on it would be 2-0. Ruben, he chases down a loose puck and gets it to the front of the net, where Luke Elliott would put it in for his 4th of the season. We got a 3-0 lead for the Victorias heading into period number 2. But at the start of the second period, the Raiders with quite a response. Nathan Lanowski with his 2nd of the season, putting away the rebound past Penner. But later on, After they were only up by one, the Vic's top duo would work their magic.
Back to Netraduke, his shot, oh, just turned aside. Getting a piece of it there was Benera. As back on it is Rubini, gets it across to number 3 in Goretzky, who just decides to flip this down low. Out of the reach for Netraduke as he was tied up with 10 seconds remaining. Netraduke along with Rubini trying to get this puck loose. It's on Rubini's stick, driving hard towards the net, but turned aside. Backdoor that goes off, the post scores! A buzzer beater! The definition of it is with 0.0 seconds left, Netraduke somehow finds the back of the net. It'll be this victorious squad skating off.
The Victorias would move on to win this one 7-4, and it was really that goal, that buzzer beater, that ended up being a true difference in this game, as the Vics were able to add 2 more in the third period. It was quite the press from the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, as they made it within 2 goals of this Vics team in the end of it, making it 6-4 at one point, as Matthew Wilson ended up scoring his first of the year for the Raiders' 4th goal of the game. Andrew Danoon ended up getting the Raiders on the board for the first time in the third period to make it 6-3 only at the time for the Vics. But yeah, shots in that one ended up being in favor of this victorious squad with 48-37. The Raiders, I think, despite the 7th loss in a row, given that this team has also traded away quite a bit of talent as of late, trading away Nate Goodbranson, Brody Melstead, as well as making a few other moves. We'll get into that throughout this show. But yeah, I thought that, certain players on this team stepped up yesterday, even in the loss. Players like Nathan Lenoski, who I ended up giving player of the game, for Nathan. This is a player that it's his first season in the mmjhl, and he has another next year, so this could be a great, growth period for him if, he ends up staying with the Raiders next season. What would be his final year of eligibility. This team, Evan Benera in net, there were, some goals I think he would have loved to have back yesterday. There were some weak goals scored throughout this game. The goaltenders having some trouble with, some of the bounces in front. Their team's not quite clearing it away. But yeah, going back to that first period of yesterday, it was all Victorias. They dominated the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. 16-5 in the shot category. But then in the second period, we see the Raiders, like shown in the highlights, come out strong. They end up getting more direct entries, exits out of their zone, direct entries into the Victoria zone, and a good forecheck from the Raiders, paired with some just questionable decisions from the Vics, some misplays with the pucks, boded well for this Raiders Junior Hockey Club team, as they were able to get within one of the Vics, making it a 3-2 game at one point. But then, the Victorias end up getting a wonderful goal from Nolan Anderson on the rush, receiving a pass from Lucas Gilson, who I thought it was Baron Baker in the lineup, but it was Lucas Gilson making his return to this Vicks lineup this year. He played a bit with them last year, and Aiden Anderson, of course, sending that pass before to Gilson as they finished off a beauty with Nolan putting it in the back of the net. And the real backbreaker was that goal from Netraduke, the buzzer beater, because you're not only down by a few goals, you're down by 3 instead of 2, heading in to a game where you're already chasing it if you're the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. You gotta love the way they finished, though, however, competing until the end. It was a 6-4 game at one point, and the Raiders actually outshot the Vics 19-6 in that third period of play. And if there's any positive, any silver lining from this game, you could say, hey, we ended up coming in close against one of the top teams in the league. We outshot them by 3 in that third period, and we didn't lose the period. It ended up being 2-2. So those have to be the little things that this Raiders team builds on. I think that this team still has talent, and there's still, time to turn it around in the season. There's still more than half a year left. We take a look at them in the standings. They're still 6 points up with one more game played than the River East Royal Knights. In quite a slide right now. Sure, you've, lost talent throughout trades, but you brought in, some okay guys in Jack Darrett, who he'll be looking to make a difference as the season continues to go along, as he gets more used to his time in you know, Seven Oaks with this Raiders team, as well as a player like Cole Kennedy. But it's going to have to be, their top end players or something special that needs to occur for this Raiders team to get out of this slump. Maybe they get their goaltenders to steal a game or two coming up. And yeah, you need your best players to be your best players here to snap you out of it. The push was good from them last night, but not quite good enough to beat a Vic's team that's now 3-1 against the Raiders Junior Hockey Club this season. The next meeting between these two teams will be coming on January 12th, the final meeting of the year. It'll be played in the afternoon, I'm assuming on the weekend, at Seven Oaks Arena here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. But before that, we got much more mmjhl to talk about and cover until we get into the 2025 calendar year here. We're going to welcome on a goaltender that ended up taking home goaltender of the month honors for November in Alex Paul's here up next on the mmjhl podcast for episode 11, season 2 on G Show Productions. Alex comes on the show to talk to me about, a bit of last year, how this year's been going, and we also talk about the upcoming week and for this Fort Garry Twins team here on the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast, presented by Make-Cannon Fasteners and Tools, Terraco Goaltenders, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. Alex Pauls, starting goaltender for the Fort Garry Twins, and one of the best in the league this season, joins the show next. Number 33, starting goaltender for the Fort Garry Twins in the mmjhl, and Alex Pauls joining this edition of the mmjhl podcast. Alex, you've been off to a fantastic start to start this year. The Twins are fourth place, actually, currently tied for third with the St. Vital Junior Victorias. You guys with the 13-6-1 record. Yeah, what's it been like this year? The start this team's been able to have from your perspective.
Oh, it's been really great. I mean, for me personally, I've got a lot of help from my team this year. Um, we didn't have a lot of people leaving from last year, so it was great to just pick up some of those extra pieces that we might have needed and know exactly what we had coming into the season. And so far, it's been pretty good. You know, staying up near the top of the league and doing very well so far. So.
Yeah, and had a chance to talk to, of course, team captain Dean Gorchinski and talked about how crucial this quick start has been. But I mean, taking a look at your stat line from last year, 13, 12, and 3. I mean, there's a lot of season to go so far this year still, but 8-2 and 1 to start off this year with 2 shutouts. Speak about it. What's it been like different maybe for you to be able to start off so well this year? Like you said, maybe getting more help from your teammates, but what in your game specifically?
Well, yeah, it's been really great, coming into a team that I'm really familiar with, and even a league that I'm familiar with, knowing kind of different teams and play styles and stuff like that. One thing that I had to adjust to a lot, yeah, last year was the more systems. Because coming from that kind of lower junior B league, um, there's a lot more of those higher quality players, and they kind of what you're doing a little bit more, and so just learning those systems was a very big help. So this year I can kind of come in with all that information and really just get going on a solid team, right? Like you said, we have a ton of great guys on the roster, and so them helping out a lot, and especially with some of the off-season pickups we've made, it makes my job easier because I'm not expected to steal games at all, right? I can kind of just stay in there, do my job, and that's helped a lot with relieving some pressure off me, and then we can move on and just keep winning game after game. So it's been great.
Yeah, and of course, as mentioned, this being your second year in the mmjhl, last year being your rookie year, you had a chance to spend some time with the North Winnipeg Satellites the previous 2 seasons in the CRJHL. But I want to touch back on last year. You end up playing about 28 games, this team brings in Michael O'Sullivan on a loan, and he ends up getting the net in the playoffs. Just from taking in that experience, looking back at it, have you used it as motivation? Maybe I'm reaching on it, but just in general, what you learned from, I guess, that rookie year in terms of, you not being that guy in the end for this team.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very odd year for me because I started off playing almost every game. I played like 28 of 30 to start the season or something like that. And then we brought in Sully and I got injured. I hurt my knee kind of soon after he came in. And so, it's a tough decision for a coach to have to make. And, whether you like it or not, it's what happened. And I can respect that. Um, but it has been good just kind of seeing my team pull through some of those situations. And yeah, you know, playoff experience is always good, but at some points you got to develop a little bit more. And if a different decision is made, that's just how it goes. So at the end of the day, it's definitely been helping for this year, just kind of seeing that whole experience and experiencing the league. So
Well, appreciate that context on that. Did not know you were dealing with an injury. And I mean, you spoke about it how, not quite having the playoff success last year. Of course, this Twins team hasn't made it through a first round in over a decade. But looking at it, like you mentioned, with so many returning guys this season and what a lot of these guys went through last year with dealing with adversity, a slow start, and working back into the playoffs, all of that. Do you feel like, it's made this team potentially better in the long run heading into this year, looking for, going on a championship run?
yeah, for sure. And I mean, no matter what kind of experience it is, the more experience you have, the better, right? So kind of having some of those junior A guys, having that playoff experience, that type of stuff, it always does help in the end. So I think it gives us a really good chance this year. Um, with a bunch of our guys being O3s, it kind of feels like this is the year we're
Right.
going all in, and everybody's kind of putting their best foot forward to make sure that the season can really end in a positive way.
Well, I mean, your season got recognized, so far for you having an outstanding year, outstanding month in November specifically, as you being named November's goaltender of the month. Tell me about it. What's it like, being recognized for, all the work you've been putting in the second year in the league?
It does feel really great. I mean, you never expect those awards or that type of thing. That's not really what you're going for. At the end of the day, it's the wins. But I've been on some, we'll say, questionable teams in the past, just not great records and that type of thing. So kind of playing on a team that I know they're solid in front of me and they can really help me, and then getting a bit of a recognition for that, it does feel great. So
Yeah, and I mean, like you said, this team, has been strong in front of you, but you've been, slamming the door, in net a lot of times this season, also with two shutouts overall this year. This Twins team, starting off the season with two losses, but then, since then, been doing a lot more winning than losing. Coming off of a tough shootout loss, of course, against Charleswood, but the game before that wild third period to end off 5-0 victory in St. Vital. This past weekend, though, that game against Charles would take me through it. This team was up 2-0, couldn't hold on. What went wrong for the Twins then?
yeah, I mean, part of the thing that we've had, especially you mentioned the start of the season, is that we are a very good team. And so, kind of keeping that drive going and understanding when you have to make sure you don't take your foot off the gas has been a bit of it. Um, so, we play that game against Charleswood, we're up 2-0 near the beginning of the game, and then maybe take your foot back a little bit. I could maybe make an extra save here or there, right?
Right.
Just kind of all those different things where you start off well, but if you don't keep going at that same level and pushing for more, then sometimes you can get yourself tripped up. So
Yeah, and I mean, with how close this league has been, dating back to last year and even this year, if you boys end up winning that game, you end up in second place heading
yeah,
into this week of action. So putting it into perspective, I guess, looking back at it, is it just another lesson, another step in the road for this team, knowing that every single game you got to bring your, best game for 60 minutes as much as possible?
Yeah, that's definitely it. And like it does make a difference for the standings, but at the end of the day, right? The difference between, second or third, um, it can help, but doesn't make a massive difference
Yeah.
when you're kind of playing a bit of a lower end team in the playoffs, right? So as long as you're kind of learning and making sure that that same type of thing doesn't happen again, it seems like that's kind of the end goal for the season. So
Well, speaking of teams that are on the lower side of the standings, the St. James Junior Canucks facing off against them on Friday, then facing off against a team in ninth place right now in the River East Royal Knights. Both of those games going to be on the road. The expectations, I guess, this week for this team looking to bounce back against two teams that are going to be coming in hungry to beat one of the top teams in the league right now in Fort Garry.
yeah, and I mean we've had some struggles a bit against them this season. Um, we took an OT win against River East, and then we lost our second time around against St. James. So I think no matter who you're playing in this league, if you're looking for a 4 point weekend, it's going to be hard. And so we're just going to try and go in there. We have a practice tonight, and then we're going to work our way towards hopefully another 4 points this weekend.
You gotta ask the general feel of what's going on in practices right now. Is it system stuff? Is it maybe just some skill drills? What's the team focusing on heading into, like you said, a 2 game weekend?
Yeah, it's a lot of systems. We're still kind of just cleaning stuff up. And, the more you can clean up your systems, that kind of helps if you do take a little bit of a step back in the middle of the games. Because then if you're in a better position or whatever it might be, it can kind of save you a little bit. So that's kind of the main focus and just making sure that we don't get lazy at all, right? Just keeping that effort up at all times.
For sure. Well, this Fort Garry Twins team, like mentioned, 13-6-1, tied for third place with St. Vital in the standings, looking to keep their pace atop of these MMJHL standings with 2 big games coming up this weekend against St. James as well as River East. Alex Paul's November goaltender of the month in the MMJHL, starter for the Fort Garry Twins, joining this edition of the MMJHL podcast. Thanks for joining me, Alex. It was a lot of
Thanks for having me.
and goaltender for the Fort Garry Twins, Alex Paul's joining this edition of the MMJHL podcast. As you can see, there are all the players who were recognized for the November awards. Paul's teammate in Gorchinski takes home. Moment. Yeah. Apologies, there was some video playing in the background. But yeah, these are the November players of the month. Gorchinski, captain of the Twins, comes home with player of the month. Neil and Delarone both repeat in their respective categories here. Neil won defenseman of the month for October, while Delarone won rookie of the month in October. He is not the one to take home goalie of the month this time around, though, as he won October's goalie of the month. Of course, that goes to Paul's, as outside of Maroney, it was Paul's who had the best record in that month out of any goaltender in the league. 4-1 compared to Logan Maroney's 4-0 record. His save percentage way better, though, in terms of Paul's 931 compared to Maroney's 886. So congratulations to today's guest in Alex Pauls on taking home November goaltender of the month, as well as all the other players here in Gorchinski, Neil, and Delarone for winning in their respective categories. As we will take a commercial break here coming up. I'm going to play the Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia commercial. Then we'll be back to discuss power rankings, stats from around the league, and previewing tonight's MMJHL game day matchup between the Charleswood Hawks at Eric Coy at home to take on the River East Royal Knight. That's all coming up here on G-Show Productions edition of the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast here on G-Show Productions on gshow.ca. Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry upper deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store. Welcome back to the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast here on G-Show Productions. We got the right window this time around. Just got done doing the Manitoba Hockey podcast before this episode, so yeah, I don't know how I got to that window in this broadcast software, but either way, I mean, we're back here on episode 11, season 2 of the mmjhl podcast, presented by McKenna Fasteners and Tools, Terrico Goaltenders, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. The upcoming schedule for this weekend in the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League sees the Fort Garry Twins at McDonald Arena tonight to take on the St. James Junior Canucks. The Charleswood Hawks taking on the River East Royal Knights on MMJHL game day at Eric Coy Arena, and Transcona going to be in the Morris Multiplex in Morris, Manitoba to take on the Pembina Valley Twisters. All teams will be in action coming up on Sunday in the league. St. Vital going to be back in action to take on Transcona, and the Raiders at home to take on the Charleswood Hawks. As for the standings in this league, we'll show it to you once more. It's the Transcona Railer Express that are the top of the top right now in the MMJHL. An outstanding 16-1-3 record. Some losses from Charleswood over the past few weeks has allowed for this team to separate themselves in the standings, including a huge win against Charleswood in their most recent matchup, as Transcona 2-0 against the Hawks so far this season. And as for the power rankings, the last time we showed you these, the Hawks were at the top, but I don't think it's any secret that, the Railers should be on top here, and that's where they are. The first team in the league to reach 100 goals this past weekend. They've been dominant in all phases of the game, really, throughout this year, and the model of efficiency that every team in the MMJHL is kind of, chasing it and trying to replicate right now, as Transcona are winners of their last 8 games in a row. For Charleswood, this team still remains in second place. They've had, a few bumps and bruises, every once in a while here, but they've been able to win against the best opponents in the league still as of late. Teams like the Vicks in their most recent matchup against them, or last Sunday when they were able to defeat the Twins and come back to beat them in a shootout. As for Fort Garry, they stay in the third spot of these power rankings, brought to you by McKenna Fasteners and Tools. Simply for the fact that they've been able to get the best of the Vic so far in the season. Series beating them most recently. And that game against Charleswood, even though they end up blowing it, the Twins start off out in front. And I don't think them blowing that lead warrants them to move down in the standings when taking a look at the teams behind them, right? Teams that they've had a lot of success against, more success against them than those teams have had against the Twins in the recent past. As for the Vicks moving atop of the St. Boniface Riels as well as the Stonewall Jets, even though the Jets beat the Vicks last time out. The Vicks, in my opinion, taking a look at their last few games, their latest win against the St. Boniface Riels, 1-0, was very strong from them. and they have the head-to-head season series over St. Boniface. And yeah, I mean, I look at their spot in the standings compared to the Stonewall Jets. Now, given that it was mostly because of that really hot start that the Vics had, that they're in this position, but they've been able to, get better as last month went along. Sure, they finished off with two losses that I think they like to forget about. First against the Charleswood Hawks on the Sunday before their Thursday nighter, last Thursday against the Fort Garry Twins, where they ended up being shut out in that one. But I love the response from this victorious team. 2 wins against 2 teams that are, way below them in the standings, in the Knights and the Raiders most recently. But this is a Vics team that is fully healthy again at this point in the season, and a team that I think, with their record, them being, among the top teams in the standings, a bit ahead of, the Reals right now in the standings as well, way ahead of the Jets in the standings, I think their spot is warranted there at number 4. As for 6, 7, and 8, the Royal Knights, they move up simply for the fact that they've had a lot of success against the Twisters this season. And I think that if it wasn't for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club struggling the way they would, we wouldn't see the Knights move up the way they have. But yeah, they've been better than the Twisters, and the Raiders have been worse than any team in the league as of late. Heading into their matchup last night against the St. Vital Junior Victorias, we wrote an article on it. I believe off the top of my head, they had scored only 14 goals compared to allowing 37 against throughout those 6 losses in a row. It's just a team right now that, can't seem to, find their game to catch a break in this league right now in their past few games, whether it's, starting off slow or, they're close in games and then they kind of let it slip away, and then a third period comes, for example, and then boom, the team puts up like a 4 spot on them, for example. Like, this Raiders team is just lacking a consistent 60 minutes. This team has some good pieces on this team still, right? When we're talking about players like Lucas D'Souza, Owen Larenko, players like that have been leading the way, an underrated player in Andrew Danoon as well, and they got some solid goaltending as well, but overall the help in front of their goaltenders hasn't been the best. And you take a look at the standings, right? Like, we'll pull them up again, but this is a team that, sure, they have some okay offensive numbers with 71 goals, which is still near the bottom of the barrel for the teams that are in the playoff spots in this top 8 in this league. But overall, when you take a look at their goals against, it's been ugly so far this year, the worst out of any playoff team in that category so far. And this is a team that's been averaging some of the most shots against per game as well this season. So there's a lot in their game that they need to clean up. And for right now, like, they move from 5 to 10 in the power rankings because no team has been worse than them in the last 7 games, as they've lost 7 in a row. Got a feel for, the players on this team right now, but at the same time, there's a lot of season left. It's about how you respond at this point in the year. We'll take a look at some statistics now from around this league, and Tyler Rubini, 2 goals ahead of Nathan Turner and Peyton Bateman in the goal category, as he's remained the goal leader ever since the start of the season, really, in the mmjhl. Rory Neal tied with Connor Davis for 13 goals for that 5th spot. We just didn't have enough room to put Connor on this list due to our space in here. He's also tied with Nathan Vandenbush, or Nolan Vandenbush, as I should say, for 20 assists as well there. No one's been better than Dean Gorczynski, who's had 30 assists so far this season. As for the point leaders, it's Rubini on top. Last week, Gorczynski overtook him for a little while, but then Rubini having a multi-point game in that win against River East for this Vic squad put him back to the top. And of course, a multi-point night in their win against the Raiders within those 7 goals. Connor Davis now into the top 5 in points with 33. We look at the goaltending leaders. No better tandem than the Transcon Railer Express's tandem right now, even though Sage Delarone is currently dealing with a minor injury that's kept him out day to day. Yeah, Alex Pauls, as we can see here, today's guest and November goaltender of the month. Still a ways behind Keegan Gordon, but yeah, phenomenal save percentage so far this year throughout his first, 11 games of the year with 2 shutouts in there as well. Check out the mmjhl's website at mmjhl.ca for more details on the stats leaders in this great league. Yeah, mmjhl game day tonight. We're going to talk about that in a moment as we bring... we'll put McKenna Fasteners and Tools onto the screen. Located in Brandon and Winnipeg, by the way. Check out their store locations. They're your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. They got stuff for just about everybody that you can benefit from. If you're looking for the best tools in the industry, this is the place to go. They got a bunch of different lines of products. Very, very cool stuff in the Winnipeg location. And then the Brandon store, I think they got even more variety, which is cool at that. But yeah, in terms of the MMJHL news, I want to see if they put this into the transactions as of late, because I was looking around, different teams in preparation of writing an article that we put out yesterday to preview Thursday in the MMJHL. I came across something quite interesting, that Nate Goodbranson and Brody Melstead are no longer on the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, but in fact, they are now on the Stonewall Jets. And here we have it. This move was made on November 30th, so last week, last Friday. So this happened, I'm assuming, maybe before the game it was found out that this team ended up playing for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. But yeah, they ended up sending Nathan Goodbranson, Brody Melstead, and Logan Clark to the Stonewall Jets, along with Leland Cody, Leland Cody, to the Stonewall Jets in return for Jack Derritt, Cole Kennedy, Mason Larveld, Brandon Burak, and Campbell Epp. A lot of young players going to the Raiders Junior Hockey Club in this move. In fact, Jack Derritt is a 2005 born player, same with Kennedy, and Larveld as well. Brandon Burak is a 2006 born player, same with Campbell Epp. Yeah, I think the Raiders, we've seen them deal big-time players before. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I believe it was Connor Grunston, who ended up being dealt from the Raiders and ended up going to the Transcon Railer Express a few years back, and Grunston turned into one of the top players in the league. Who knows? I mean, the room is such an important thing. I don't know anything if there was any drama going on in the dressing room. I do know this, though, with the Raiders struggling and with Nate Goodbranson, Brody Melstead, and Logan Clark all being in their last years. I don't know off the top of my head right now. I'm going to do some digging into this because I just found out about the trade recently. But, maybe they came together and said, look, you guys are top-end players on this team, but we have a chance to get younger. Things aren't looking as hot right here, right now, and we have a chance to, potentially send you over and trade to a Stonewall Jets team that is kind of geared up to make that next step into the playoffs this season, right? Only missing out by 2 points last season. So in terms of that perspective, when we're talking about buyers and sellers at a trade deadline, even though the trade deadline isn't coming up until January in this league, the Raiders are in a position right now where they still are in a playoff spot, but have been sliding as the season has gone along, where they're kind of in that seller's mode, and as opposed to the Stonewall Jets, where the Jets have only, they started up higher up in the standings at the start of the year. but end up kind of falling a bit. Now they're middle of the pack. This is a team that's relied so much on their top end talent. So with a team that's looking to take that next step and to improve your team overall, they go out and do just this by adding a star player in Nate Goodbranson and some good quality players in Brody Melstead on the forward end, and also adding to their defensive core and getting a player like Logan Clark. Yeah, we'll have to see how this move plays out, and we'll have to see how these players develop for this Raiders Junior Hockey Club team that they have now on the younger side compared to Goodbranson, Melstead, and Clark, who mentioned are 03 players. None of the players that the Raiders get back are 03 born, the youngest being 05s in Darrett as well as Larveld. So this Raiders team, yeah, I mean they're hoping that in the future here, coming up in the next few years, that these players can pay off big time, because boy, do they give up quite the talent to go out and get these players. I think Stonewall's probably pretty pleased about it, as those three players ended up making their debut last night. I'm not sure about Logan Clark, though, as he was actually, I think, tuning into our stream. It might have been someone with the same name, different person, but I thought that was kind of funny as that broadcast was going on. But yeah, Stonewall going to be back in action against the St. James Junior Canucks coming up this Sunday afternoon in Abe McDonald Arena in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And yeah, they'll be looking to get back in the win column, as heading into this Sunday, they are the number 6 team in the league, trying to close the gap right now of the teams that are over top of them, but might be tough, as these teams all playing some pretty good hockey right now in the Twins, Riels, Vicks, Hawks, and Railer Express. Speaking of the Charleswood Hawks, they take on the River East Royal Knights tonight, as we take a look at the head-to-head between these two teams this season. Of course, Charleswood comes into the matchup second place in the league with a 14-5-1 record. River East, a complete opposite record, 5-14-1 for themselves, ninth place in the league. The head-to-head so far this year, both games have gone to the Charleswood Hawks. Yeah, and for Charleswood, I believe looking back at it, we actually broadcasted the first game of the season between these two teams down in Iroquois. Last game was played at Terry Sawchuk back on November 3rd. These teams will have two more matchups against each other heading forward this season, not until January 12th and until February 14th. But yeah, for Charleswood, they're a team that started off the year so strong, as about consistent as anyone in this league. But in their last 5 games, it's been, some losses, and some losses they'd for sure like to have back, losing against a Pembina Valley Twisters team that hasn't been very good this season, but has shocked the top teams in this league. They've beaten team in Transcona, and then, of course, most recently beating Charleswood. And yeah, Charleswood, after that loss to Pembina Valley, they come back with a strong bounce back performance against the St. Vital Junior Victorias. And then last Friday, they end up losing big 7-2 and end up coming back and beating the Fort Garry Twins 4-3 in a shootout last Sunday. So yeah, I guess there's been consistency in terms of this team bouncing back big after their losses, but they'd for sure like to find some more consistency in their game again in terms of playing a better 60 minutes, not getting down on the scoreboard like they did against the Fort Garry Twins, and just overall, I think getting back to being in control of, most of the game. They have a heck of a chance to do that tonight against the River East Royal Knights squad that has showcased that they can hem teams in with the good forecheck. They can get dangerous looks, but overall, this is a team that heading into the year, there's questions, in my opinion, about this team's overall skill. And despite having a 2-0 start, this team has only won 3 games since their opening weekend. Their last 5 games haven't been that spectacular, right? Yeah, they only lose 3-1 to the Stonewall Jets. They win 7-0 against the Pembina Valley Twisters. But against, more of the top teams in this league, like St. Boniface and St. Vital. This team comes away with a huge loss against St. Boniface, losing 8-2, and one against the St. Vital Junior Victorias, where they lose 4-2 last Sunday. They've even struggled against some of the teams that are near the bottom of the standings, but are in playoff spots, like the St. James Junior Canucks, who, credit them, they are getting better and better as the year goes along. But for River East, this is a team that comes in that hasn't been very good defensively so far this season, and they're players that have stepped up and have contributed big time. They've gotten, that scoring from committee, but yeah, compared to the Charleswood Hawks, where I think this team's a much deeper team, a team that, you know, has great goaltending as well. Not saying this River East Royal Knights team doesn't, but I just think that Charleswood is overall built a bit better than this River East Royal Knights team on paper. Built, so deep, so much depth on this Charleswood Hawks team. And if that comes through tonight for them, if they come ready to play, I don't see how, Charleswood ends up taking a loss in tonight's matchup against the River East Royal Knights. When you take a look at the skill advantage they have on paper, as well as just, overall how these two teams' seasons have gone, Charleswood coming in, gives me a bit more optimism if I were, to bet on this game to roll with Charleswood to take it home tonight. But we'll have to see how high the Hawks do fly tonight, or if they flock instead. Going up against the River East Royal Knights. Puck drops at 7:30 p.m. on G Show Productions on gshow.ca. We're hoping to have our pregame show before that, just starting after 7:20 p.m. from the Koi in Winnipeg, Manitoba. But yeah, we're going to take it to one last little transition here, and I'll be back for some final words on this edition of the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast here on G Show Productions on gshow.ca. Well, you made it to the end of this edition of the Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League podcast. I've been your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. Special thanks to Alex Pauls for coming on and joining this edition of the show. Special thanks to you, the viewer, for tuning in as well and supporting this one, as well as to Terrico, McKenna Fasters and Tools, Goaltenders, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia for sponsoring another edition of the MMJHL podcast. Next edition of the MMJHL podcast comes out next week. Stay tuned for the details that will be released on our social media pages, as well as on our website near the start of next week, either on Monday or on Tuesday. But until then, everybody, I've been your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. Wishing you all the best this weekend. Hoping you stay warm and bundled up while you can, as it is freezing out as of late here, as winter is truly upon us here in this great province of Manitoba. But yeah, we got MMJHL Game Day Hockey coming to you all weekend long. We'll also be broadcasting the Railer Express versus Victoria's game on Sunday afternoon from East End Arena. Should be great, should be a lot of fun, and can't wait to bring it to you all. For those of you tuning in to the game tonight at Iroquois Arena, we're going to be getting there, our stuff and making our way there soon, very soon indeed, as yeah, it's already 3:08 and that game starts at 7:30 tonight. So what we're going to do now is, end off this show and prepare for what should be an exciting game between the Hawks and Royal Knights tonight. We hope to have you tune into it, but if you don't, we'll have to wait and see until next week, everybody, on the next edition of the MMJHL podcast for Season 2, Episode 12. Like I said, been your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth, giving you the salute, peacing out, and waving so long, everybody. Take care, and thanks for watching.